Before we get into the video, I wanted to share a special tool that David and I have been using for over 2 years to manage our inventory on Amazon. The tool is called SoStocked, and it is a very powerful tool. It's designed specifically for inventory management. If you're in a physical products business selling on Amazon, you need to be in stock, especially with the inventory restrictions lately. This tool is incredibly powerful. If you're having trouble with inventory management, this might be a tool to help you. SoStocked is partnered with Firing Demand, and they've offered our guests, our listeners, a 30-day free trial. So click the link in the video description to get 30-day free trial. On to the video. Before we get into the video, I wanted to share a special tool that David and I have been using for over 2 years to manage our inventory on Amazon. The tool is called SoStocked, and it is a very powerful tool. It's designed specifically for inventory management. If you're in a physical products business selling on Amazon, you need to be in stock, especially with the inventory restrictions lately. This tool is incredibly powerful. If you're having trouble with inventory management, this might be a tool to help you. SoStocked is partnered with Firing Demand, and they've offered our guests, our listeners, a 30-day free trial. So click the link in the video description to get 30-day free trial. On to the video.
Welcome, everyone, to the Firing Demand podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Krista Grasso. Krista is the go-to strategic planning and systems expert for online businesses when they want to scale. She is known as the business optimizer and has the ability to quickly cut through the noise and provide clarity on core things that will make the biggest impact to scale a business simply and sustainably. She's the founder of the Lean Out Method and creator of the Lean Business Scaling System, as well as the host of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. We're very excited to have Krista as a part of the show. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. So to start things off, can you please share with our listeners a little bit about your background and your path to becoming a business optimizer in the e-commerce space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had always wanted to run my own business. I actually went to school for fine art back many years ago. And about pretty close to graduation, I started to think about, what do I really want to do if I'm running my own business? I probably need to know something about business. I know a lot about my craft, but I don't necessarily know a lot about business. So I ended up switching majors, graduating with a business degree, graduating with a whole lot of business debt, as many people do. And I decided that I was going to work for a few years to pay off that debt while I figured out what I wanted to do and launch my business. I knew it was going to be an e-commerce business. I did eventually launch that. It ended up being a jewelry business that I've had for 19 years. So really great experience with that. But what I wasn't expecting was the job that I took, that I thought I was taking for a short period of time just to pay off some college debt, ended up being something I absolutely loved. And I ended up falling into lean. I ended up falling into project management and consulting and all of these strategies that I later ended up using in my e-commerce business when things got way too complex and I scaled the business way more quickly than I was ready for. I didn't have a lot of the systems in place that I needed. I did not have a lot of the team that I needed to support me. There was no optimization of anything going on. It was a hot mess and kind of a surprise that I got orders out when they came in. And when we had that experience where I ended up scaling really quickly, what felt like overnight, although it wasn't, I quickly realized that I needed to leverage a lot of what I was doing with my other clients in the lean consulting and bring it into my own business. And that ended up being the creation of the Lean Out Method and a lot of what I do with my clients, which is really about optimizing what's working, creating systems, creating the right structures around you from a people, process, tools perspective so that you're able to actually sustain the growth and scaling that you want in your business.
So one follow-up question I have is, you refer to lean. And so for people that are not familiar with that term, what is it, as we're going to be referring to it quite a bit throughout the episode?
Absolutely. So lean came up in the manufacturing space, and really at its most simplistic form, it's really about increasing value and decreasing waste. And for any sort of e-commerce business, I feel like that is so incredibly important. You want to make sure that whatever it is that you're selling is of high value, that the experience that you're creating for your clients is of high value, and you want to make sure that you don't have waste. You don't have wasted inventory. You don't have wasted time. You're not wasting money on things. So I felt like lean ended up being really, really applicable in the e-commerce space, especially for anyone who has physical products that they themselves are manufacturing, tracking inventory for, and all of the complexities that goes along with that.
Awesome. So, Krista, thanks for sharing your background. I really like how you've been down in the weeds and working in e-commerce business for a very long time. You bring a wealth of knowledge to the show, and I'm excited. My first question is one that I really, really enjoy asking other entrepreneurs, and it's, you've been building, I think you said the jewelry business for 17 years?
19.
19 years. Okay. So 19 years of being an entrepreneur, building a business, lots of mistakes and failures along the way, right? And so I think as entrepreneurs, we can learn the most from asking other entrepreneurs, like what mistakes did you make? How did you recover from them? So can you share with the audience maybe your top 3 mistakes in the last 19 years in the jewelry business, and what did you do to recover?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's so many. I feel like we could talk for about 4 days just on this topic alone. I'll try to narrow it down to 3. I think one of the big transitions for me was more of an identity evolution. And I think as business owners, we go through these different experiences where we need to shift how we look at who we are. And I started off with a jewelry business that was very much a business that was mine. It was an extension of me. I handmade every product. I went to jewelry fairs. I sold on Etsy. People were buying from me as much as they were buying the products that I created. I realized I hit a ceiling on that business. I wasn't going to be able to scale it or take it where I wanted, so I needed to change my business model, and I did. I partnered with manufacturers. I slimmed down my product line. I did a lot of things right to build a scalable business model, but I hadn't changed who I was and how I approached design. And so I still designed like an artist instead of like a business owner who was trying to make a profit. And I made things way more complex than they needed to be, which meant things were way more expensive than they needed to be. So my profit margins were slim, my prices were higher than what the market expected, and the things that I thought were so incredibly important and that mattered in a small handcraft market were not things that people cared about at all when they were buying off of my website and didn't know or care about me as the artist. And so it was that transition of maker to business owner, artist to entrepreneur, right? It was really starting to look at things with more of a business lens, to design with the end in mind and look at what's the right price point for this product? What's the right profit margin that I want to have? How can I have a product that fits that, instead of just creating what I felt like creating and then trying to apply everything after? So that was one of the really big mistakes that I made, and it was a very expensive mistake that I made. I ended up with a lot of inventory that I ended up having to sell at a loss, because all those special touches that I put into the product were things that people were not willing to pay for, much to my dismay. So that was number 1.
That's a huge pivot too, by the way. Like also recognizing that you needed to make that pivot and then making that pivot. That I think that's huge.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then I think the other one too, number 2, is of course I had changed the business model. I decided I wanted to scale. And so I designed for scale. I hired sales teams. I hired sales reps. I went to all of the major big shows that you went to sell your product. I did all the things that I was told I should do. And I'm saying should in air quotes there. And I never took the time to stop or consider that I didn't have to do it that way. I just thought this is how you scale a jewelry business. This is how you become the next big e-commerce jewelry business. And so I accumulated, it's like embarrassing to say, but listeners, please don't do what I did, learn from my mistake. I accumulated hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, because when you are manufacturing product, when you have way too many SKUs, which was something that I did, another mistake, and you think that you need to go all out, pre-buy all the product so it's available for shipment immediately, all the expensive shows, fly there, send your product, do all of that, produce these amazing fancy printed lookbooks, all the stuff that at the time I started the business were the go-to things that you saw the big brands doing. It just didn't make sense. I was emulating a brand that was about 100 steps beyond where I was without realizing it. And I was taking advice from sales reps and others who did not care about my vision, never even asked me what my vision was. They were just telling me what they saw and thought that I should do. So that was another really big and really expensive mistake that I made.
Absolutely. I really like those mistakes that you made along the journey, and that you the pivots that you made. And so I think we'll get into a couple more of those throughout the episode. Ken, anything else you want to follow up on that?
No, those were huge. And yeah, I think, everybody listening can learn and two things. One is like knowing when to pivot, and 2 is making that pivot. And that's both crucial.
So, keeping with the theme of mistakes, there is a revenue range between about $500,000 and $5 million. That's often referred to as the messy middle. So, my question is, what are some of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make when they are in the messy middle and they're trying to scale their business?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, we've all heard the what got you here won't get you there. And I think that is so, so true. And for some businesses, they hit it at 500,000. Other businesses hit it at 1 million. Some hit it just over 1 million. But there becomes a point in time where all the things that were working stop working. You used to be able to kind of wing it a little bit. You used to be able to pivot on a dime, right? And all of a sudden you realize I need people. I need better people. I need structure. I need some kind of planning practices. I have to be really, really intentional with my time, with my money, with what I do. And I think that tends to happen for most businesses in, like I said, that 500,000 to 1 million mark, where you become somewhat of a one-person leader in the early days. Even if you've got a team surrounding you, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you have team around you, you still are really the sole person who's making a lot of the decisions, doing a lot of the things, and kind of making a lot of the stuff up as you go along. And all of a sudden that needs to change at some point because you cannot keep doing it. I know that was very much what happened for me. I went from selling a couple hundred products in a month to selling thousands of products a day. I could not do things myself. It was not possible anymore. I needed systems. I needed real inventory, not the Excel spreadsheet that I had been tracking things in, right? I needed to look at real tools. I needed to surround myself with not just people to get things done, but people to help me with really important things in the business. It's not just like the people you're delegating grunt work to. It's people who can actually help you to deliver strategically and bring things forward. And I think that you need to get there in the business, and the sooner you get there, the sooner you're going to break through. But where the mistake comes in is a lot of people cling to and hold on to the things that they did to get them to that level, and they don't want to put the systems and structure in place. They feel like it might be too restrictive to do things like planning, and they don't always want to bring on team or bring on high-level team who can help them make decisions. They just want to bring on more lower-level team to delegate things to. And it's the longer you hold off on making those changes, the longer you hold off on shifting things in the business, you actually keep yourself stuck right at the level you're at instead of allowing yourself to break through to that next big revenue milestone.
So, Krista, if we rewind a bit to where you had mentioned, you went from selling a few hundred a month to thousands per day, and you were in a predicament like at that point in time. So, take yourself back to that point in time, and what are some of the steps that you did from right there? Like, if we have listeners that are listening to the show and they're at that point or they will be soon, what are like the top 2 or 3 things that you did that helped you go from that level to the next level?
Yeah, one of the very first things that we did was we needed a really accurate inventory management system because, again, we had things that were very asynchronous. We sold in multiple places. We had sales reps, so we were selling wholesale, we were selling retail. If you're only selling a couple of something, it doesn't really matter. The chance that you're going to oversell an inventory item isn't really high. But when you're all of a sudden selling at really high volumes, you can really quickly sell stock that doesn't exist. So we had to get an actual real system that tracked and managed our inventory and that synced to our Shopify store, that synced to our Etsy store, so that everything was updated in real time. That ended up saving us a ton of time because we spent so much time emailing people, we're so sorry, this sold out, can we get you this instead, and sending people links. And so it eliminated a lot of the churn and disappointment when people would buy something and oops, we didn't have it, or we were killing ourselves trying to find the inventory or make the inventory. And so that was a really big thing that we did in the beginning that made things better and really saved us a lot of time, plus helped with the client experience. Because nobody wants to be excited about an order and then get the email that says, just kidding, we don't have it, right?
Yeah, that's the worst.
It's so great that you wanted that, but no. So we had to take care of that and address it. So that was one of the things. We really dialed in our processes. We really standardized a lot of the responses that we would send when people would email something in. We made sure and looked at themes? Where did we get asked the same questions? How could we change the receipts that we send people so that they don't ask this question? We put it right on the receipt. How can we have an autoresponder that answers the most common questions? So we look at things like that, where could we automate as much as we could, because we need to make sure that we are not spending our time anywhere that we don't need to, because our time is very stretched thin and precious, right? We brought on the right team to support everything. But one of the other really big pieces that went along with the inventory management was not just the inventory of in-stock, ready-to-sell unit. It was the inventory so that we knew accurately what our prices were and what our profit margins were, because we had kind of been winging it up to that point. Probably cost us about $10. I mean, that seems about right. This is this much. This is this much. If we charge 20, yeah, it's a good profit margin. Cool. Oh, we're going to wholesale it now. Now we'll charge 35 or 40 for it. And we're golden, right? All of a sudden, you start selling at that volume. You're giving steeper discounts. You're paying reps. You're doing all these things. We really needed to know precisely how much profit was in that material, right? How much profit was in each product. So we knew what to sell, what not to sell. So those were some of the things that we did, but it was really just tightening up our systems, our processes, and getting the right people in place more so than anything else.
On the topic of people, what were some of the first positions that you filled? And you had talked about finding the type of person that can make decisions as opposed to someone you can delegate tasks to. So what were the positions and where did you find the people?
Yeah, so there is a concept that I believe in fully. It is one of our core values when we're hiring somebody. And it is, I never want somebody that I have to delegate to. I want somebody who takes inspired ownership. So it's something that we interview for. It's something that we really make sure that we vet the right candidates for. We want people who are going to come in and who are going to own the outcome and do whatever it takes until the outcome is achieved, or to figure out how to get there if they don't know how to get there. So things aren't constantly being bottlenecked by me having to answer all the questions and make all the decisions. We want figure it outers, like smart people who can figure stuff out. So less things come to me from a decision perspective. So that was the approach that we took. And of course, we refined this a lot over the years. But one of the very first people that I hired is still with me to this day. She is a complete and total rock star. She's my director of operations, and she did everything from, oops, we didn't have that product in stock. So she would be making that product so that we could send it to clients, to handling the customer service and really making sure that all of the inventory was done, everything was done, partnering with our manufacturers to answer questions. She became an extension of me, my right-hand person, so I could stay more in the place of design, relationship management, and those sorts of things, and she could handle delivery and operations. Now, she obviously did not do all of that herself. That's a very big role for one person, but she owned all of that. And she very quickly learned, but I also knew I could trust her to make a good decision. Even if the decision she made is different than the one I would have wanted, and I could course correct and say, hey, next time that happens, instead of doing this, we should handle it this way. I knew with full confidence that whatever she decided would not be opposed to our values or would not in any way really hurt the brand. So that to me was super important when I hired her. And I'd say she's been my most critical hire, and that's why she's still with me. I don't even know, 10 years later since I first hired her. Long time. She is amazing. My family has a saying that everybody in their life needs a Kylie. I agree fully. So Kylie, if you're listening, thank you. You're amazing. But that being said, beyond that, we had customer service people. As we started selling at much higher volumes, that became really important. We brought a lot of our sales in-house. So instead of paying external sales reps, we did the sales ourselves, working with wholesalers and other stores who were selling our product. So we brought that in-house. And again, Kylie just managed it all. She's amazing.
I got one follow-up question. I love this concept of inspired ownership. So my follow-up question is, do you have any recommendations on compensating these individuals to align interests to where when they achieve the desired outcome, there is kind of a carrot at the end for them?
Yeah, I love that model. And it's really interesting, right? Because the reality is we frequently need to hire people before we feel ready to hire them financially. And one of the ways that you can do that is by incentivizing performance. And it's really easy to do if somebody's in a direct sales role, right? A sales rep, you're going to pay a percentage of sales. If somebody's doing sales, you do. But what do you do when somebody's an operations person and they track your inventory for you and answer customer requests, right? It's not as easy to manage and not as easy to track. And so what we would do do is I would do a percentage of profit. So at the end of the quarter, we would look at how profitable we were, and I would do a percentage of profit on top of what I paid. And it was a way in the beginning because I didn't really pay very well in the beginning because I couldn't. I mean, I paid what felt like a whole lot for the business at the time when I first started, but looking back on it, it wasn't a great amount of money that I was paying, right? I've adjusted that quite a bit over these past 10 years for all of the people that I've had that have worked for me. But back in the early days, not so much, but that was a way that I felt really good about it and a way that helped everybody really buy into the success of the company because they end up getting bonused out based on that.
Yeah, I like that. That it kind of aligns both interests, where it's not a guaranteed bonus. It's based off of profit of if the company is successful because of your contributions, then you're going to get a piece of that. So that's awesome. One other thing you said, Krista, that really resonated with me was hiring problem solvers. And so if along the way, as you're hiring people to help you grow your company, hiring problem solvers, and that will keep more problems down at a level and not let them bubble up. So that really resonated. I want to get back to knowing your numbers. And so you kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier of like, that was a kind of a piece to the scaling is like, hey, you have to be sharp on the numbers. And so why should your business be lean, lux, and leverage when you want to scale sustainably?
Yeah, absolutely. So lean, as we talked about, increasing value while decreasing waste. Nothing is going to eat into your profit margins more than waste in your business, right? Whether it's time of people that you're paying for to do things that don't need to be done, it's money that you're losing because you have poor quality in your product, or whether you're overpaying for certain pieces of the components of your product, whatever that looks like, right? So you want things to be lean. You want to have confidence that you've got the right things at the right level of quality without any extra waste in your system. So I think that's really important. That helps you with your profit margin. That helps you with getting really clear on what your costs are and that you're investing in the right things. Now, lux is luxury. And to me, this comes into client experience. This comes into, are you providing an exceptional client experience at every point along the buying journey? From the time that someone first finds out about you, how are you guiding them towards a purchase decision? How are you making it really clear what they buy, when they're going to get it, what it looks like? Like, how are you having them maintain the excitement of their purchase instead of fall into the impulse buy regret that a lot of people have, which is, oh no, why did I buy this? Right? You want them to remain really positive and excited. And we all know that customer lifetime value is way more important than just a one-time purchase. So how do you maintain that really incredible client experience and create a reason for people to come back and buy more, either for themselves or as a gift for others, depending on what your business model is and what your product is? Like we've talked a lot about my jewelry business, but I also have a 90-day planner. So I have an e-commerce business that sells planners as well. And one of the things that I found is people do buy 4 times a year because they buy for themselves, but I would notice people buying more often than the 4 times a year cycle. And what I found was people liked it enough that they started buying it for their teams, or they started buying it for their other entrepreneur friends. And so I think when you create a really luxe client experience, people want a reason to buy more, and they will find a reason to continue to buy, continue to support your brand. They will, I can't tell you how many pictures people post in my jewelry, of my planners, of my products. And I think that that also is part of that luxe client experience that you're providing. And just an extension of that internally in the business too. Just like I shared the mistake that I made where I kind of did a lot of the things I felt like I should do, that is not luxe. Luxe is making sure that we are building the business that we actually want and making decisions based on what feels good and feels of value and kind of fulfillment and alignment for us, instead of really feeling like you need to do the musts and shoulds. So I think there's the client experience perspective, but there's also the owner experience perspective. It's your business. You should have a business that you love and a business that you want. And I think a lot of times we can fall away from that because we get influenced too much by so many other musts and should. And then finally, leveraged, right? Anything that you're doing in your business, you want to make sure is fully leveraged. How can you get the absolute most value out of every dollar that you're spending and every hour that you're investing? And I think that that's where the leverage and the optimization that we talked about really comes into play.
What would be a good example of someone adding leverage to their time? Because I think this is a trap that a lot of entrepreneurs fall into.
Oh my gosh, absolutely right. So obviously automating anything that does not need to be done manually. So that is key, right? Not everything in business can nor should be automated, but there's a whole lot of things that can be, right? And if you're investing time in something that can be automated, if your team is investing time in things that could be automated, that in and of itself, right? Definitely not working smarter, that's working harder. That's not leverage. So look first at where you can automate. The other things is where can you really simplify what you're doing? Where can you simplify and where can you do things at scale, right? Leverage in a lot of ways helps you do things at scale. So can you spend 1 hour doing something for multiple people instead of 1 hour doing something for one person so that you're really maximizing your time? This could look like in your teams, right? Where do you repeat yourself a lot? Where do you have the same conversations over and over again, whether it be with clients, whether it be with leads, whether it be with your team members? And how can you consolidate communications, meetings, things of that nature so that you're saying something once instead? Can you create an FAQ on your website or record a video so you never have to say it again, right? Look at things like that. That's where leverage really comes in. And people sometimes say, well, I don't even know where to start. Just pay attention to where you repeat yourself a lot or where you get frustrated that you're like, if I have to say this one more time, well, you might not need to. Just get really creative with how you address it.
So what are the biggest areas of waste that drain time and profits on a business?
I've identified 10 specific areas of waste that I see quite often in most online businesses. The very first one and the biggest one is unnecessary complexity. And I shared in my example of my transition from kind of artist mind to entrepreneur mind. I made my products so much more complex than I needed to, so much more complex. It felt so important to me and genuinely nobody but me cared, right? And so I overcomplicated the process, which meant that there were way more materials. It meant that there were way more expenses. So there's a lot of that we do. And I use that example because if you remove yourself from that specific example, but just think about your business and the things that you hold dear, the things that you're like, this is so important. I have to do it this way. Do you really? Sometimes you do, but a lot of times if you can challenge yourself, you'll realize there might be a much simpler solution. Anything that feels really heavy, really complex, really time intensive, it's really good to challenge yourself to say, is there a simpler way to get the same or better result? And the answer is often yes. We just frequently don't give ourselves the time and space to really think through that question. And so we just keep doing things. But complexity shows up in so many different ways. That is the number one area of waste for sure. The other thing is new versus optimization. So especially for those of us who are natural visionaries, who are natural creators, we love to create new things. We absolutely love to create new things. We frequently do not like to keep doing the same things over and over again. Well, new is the most expensive and the hardest thing to sell, right? You have to build up demand for it. You have to, if you have, e-commerce, you probably have to do pictures, you have to do descriptions, you have to do all of these things that take a whole lot of time. What if instead you keep refining and optimizing the same core things? Think of what you can do from an SEO perspective. Think of what you can do from a brand recognition perspective. So you really want to optimize what you have. Obviously, people love new. It's not saying don't do new. You always have to do some version of new, but we tend to over-index on new and under-focus on optimization. And I think it has to be the right balance between the two to really have a lot of success where you don't have a whole lot of waste. So those are two big ones. I can keep going. There's a whole lot more, but I'll pause there because I think those are the two that feel really relevant to me.
Yeah, I like both of those, and I can definitely see how they would have a huge impact. It's the KISS theory, right? Keep it simple. And sometimes entrepreneurs, we like to not keep it simple. So if myself or my team, if I wanted to capture back time, let's say 5 hours per week, how could I do that?
Here's what I find really often is a lot of the work that we end up doing ends up being work that we don't need to be doing at all. And this again gets at one of the other areas of waste is unneeded work. But practically, if you think about the vision that you have for your business, long-term, where you really want to take the business that you have, and then you look at the goals that you have for the near term. So if you're looking, long-term, here's where I want to go. Here in the next 90 days are the things that we need to focus on in order to take us closer to that vision. If you have that clarity, a really, really valuable exercise to do is to look at the day-to-day of what you and what your team are doing and look at the things that do not support the long-term vision and the short-term goals. And I have yet to to ever find a business that has not had a whole lot of things that they are doing that does not actually support either of those things. And a lot of times it's, well, because we've always done it this way. Oh, well, I thought I needed to do that. Well, shouldn't I be on this new platform? Well, right, there's a lot of reasons why we do things that aren't really necessary, but a lot of times there's hidden time right in your business, and it starts with getting really clear on where you want to go long term and what you need to be focused on in the next 90 days. And a lot of people don't even take the time to do that. So it's no wonder that they're spending a whole lot of time being more reactive instead of proactive and doing so many things. But if you get that clarity and really do the diligence to look at what are we actually working on, and is what we're working on supporting where we want to go in the short term and where we want to go in the long term, you will inevitably get back time. Like I said, in all the businesses I've worked with, the thousands of businesses I've probably worked with in these past 20 years, I have yet to find one that did not have stuff that they were working on that was not in alignment.
So what is lean strategic planning, and why is it a better fit for entrepreneurs than traditional planning?
Yeah, so I grew up, as I shared, that very early job I got to pay off the college debt. I did a lot of project management back in the day, and I learned more traditional project management practices. And for anybody who has ever had a corporate job, which I bet a lot of you listening have, if you are not still in one, right, you probably are super familiar with the strategic planning practices that the companies do. And they're great in some respects. It's really important to have clarity on where you want to go and what you need to be focused on, and to make sure that you're putting your time and your money on the most important things. There's aspects of it that are really, really valuable. But that planning practice, if you think through it, typically takes a whole lot of time. People very reluctantly do it because they know people probably aren't going to follow the plan, or the plan isn't going to be super realistic. So they end up kind of frustrating going into the process. And as a result, when people have their own business, what I find is one of two things. They either model the traditional planning practice because it's the only thing they know, or they push so hard against planning because that's what they know that they don't plan at all. And the reality is, what I think you need is something in the middle. The nature of a small business, of an online business, it's very dynamic. Things change really rapidly. We have more ideas than we have time. And no matter, what we have going on, there's external factors at play all the time that are shifting how we market, how we sell, what we do, right? And so we can't do these really, really deep, intense, predictive planning things because things aren't that predictable in a small online business. But we also can't wing it because we need to know where we're focused. We need to have budgets. We need to be clear about what we're doing when. And so to me, lean strategic planning is a lean version of strategic planning that helps you get clear on where you're going long term, helps you get clear on what you need to be focused on in the next 90 days, and to look really holistically at what you and your team, where you're spending your time, where you're spending your money, and doing it in a way that is adaptable, that's agile, and that supports the very dynamic needs of a small business. So I created the approach to planning specifically for businesses like ours because I didn't really see anything out there that fit. There's a lot of personal productivity systems and there's a lot of complex planning systems, but there's not a lot of lean, lightweight, but really impactful systems that help people achieve their goals without making it really complex.
I like that. It definitely makes sense because you're right. Like, you can over plan and then also have no plan, and it goes south if you have no plan. So I'd like to pivot a little bit into the lean out method. Can you share with the audience the four key pillars of the lean out method and how do they help a business accelerate growth without being overworked and overwhelmed?
Yeah, absolutely. So the four pillars are context, clarity, commitment, and Kaizen. And I'll explain a little bit about each of them. But where I find most people end up really struggling in business is when they don't have their context dialed in. And we've talked a bit about that already. Context is your vision and your goals. So where are you going? Why is it important? What do you see for the future of your company? What do you need to be focused on in the short term? And do you have the right business model to actually get you there? That to me is context, and I think it is so incredibly important. It's also not something that you set once and forget about, which I see a lot of people do. Oh yeah, I have a vision. I've got a vision. My business model's solid. But they haven't circled back yet to see, have things changed and evolved, right? As you grow as the leader of your business, as your business grows, the vision of what you see for what's possible typically grows and changes as well. So I think we constantly want to be reimagining, up-leveling the vision that we have. We consistently want to be getting clear on what our near-term goals are, so we know what to be be focused on this year, this next 90 days. And we want to be constantly looking at our business model to say, is this still relevant? Is this still working really well right now? Where might I need to pivot? So that is the first pillar, which is context. The next is clarity. So you know where you're going. You know from a goal perspective what you want to be focused on. Great. What specifically do you need to do in the next 90 days? That's where the lean strategic planning comes in, where you get really clear on where you and your team are going to be focused. Next is commitment. Know where you want to go long term. You know exactly what you're going to do near term. Now, what do you need to get there? Like, what are you going to do when you run into issues and roadblocks? When the mindset gremlins creep in and you start to doubt yourself and start to delay things and aren't sure if you should make that hiring decision and, well, I'm not sure, right? So are you going to commit to seeing things through and keep going? And are you going to create your ecosystem for success around you with the systems, with the planning, with the team, with the things that you need to actually achieve the goals that you want? And then Kaizen is also really critical. This is another one that I see a lot of people miss. It's a lean word that means small changes for the better and continuous improvement. And to me, this is, do you know your numbers? Do you have your metrics? Are you looking at both quantitative and qualitative data? Are you making informed decisions and regularly reflecting on what's working as an input to what you're going to do next? So that's the lean out method. It's 4 pillars, and I think it applies to everything we do in our lives, not just our business. Do you know where you want to go? Do you have a plan to get there? Are you committed? And what do you need to actually achieve the results? And how are you going to reflect and pivot as you need to along the way?
I like the 4 pillars. That's helpful to remember. A very great explanation on those. So can you tell us a little bit more about leanoutmethod.com? And what types of clients you typically work with?
Yeah, absolutely. So leanoutmethod.com is where you can find all things Krista and the work that I do. I really help people focus on the operational side of their business more so than anything else. So it's the systems, it's the planning, it's the team, it's that ecosystem that you need around you to be able to scale in a simple, sustainable way. It's also looking at operationalizing what you do for marketing and sales. So it's great that you're out there bringing in new leads. We need that. That's absolutely critical. How can you optimize that process and really refine that process, automate what you can, really making sure that you're creating leverage with what you're doing so you're getting the best possible results. So it's both the back-end operations as well as operationalizing the things that you're doing more front-end to be bringing in new clients and actually selling. So that's a lot of the work that we do with our clients. I work a lot with coaches, consultants, and service-based businesses. You'll see that on my website a lot, but privately, because I have such deep experience with e-commerce, I work a lot with e-commerce business owners. It's just, I don't have most of my group programs to it because we all know e-commerce is complex. There is a lot of complexity in e-commerce, and I have found it needs that more personal touch and that more personal deep dive in what a specific business needs as opposed to something a little bit broader.
Excellent. So Krista, all of the guests that we bring on the show, we run them through the ringer, and it's called the fire round. Are you ready?
Bring it.
What is your favorite book?
The Big Leap, Gay Hendrick. So if you've heard the term Zone of Genius, which I absolutely love, it comes from that book.
Awesome. That's a good one. What are your hobbies?
Right now, I'm obsessed with pickleball. I never thought I would say that, but as soon as we're done recording, I am going to play pickleball. This is what I do to transition from my work day to my non-work day, almost every single day that it's not raining.
That's awesome. I love pickleball too. My son loves to kick my butt in pickleball, so that's awesome. What is one thing that you do not miss about working for the man?
So I bet a lot of people probably say freedom, and the same is true, but for me, it's freedom of choice. One of the things I love so much in business is we get to choose who we surround ourselves with. We get to choose how we spend our time. We get to choose what we do. We get to choose who's on our team. And in a lot of other environments, you don't get that choice. You have to, or you don't get as much influence over that choice as you do in your own business. So that to me is the most important. I truly get to decide exactly what I'm going to do and who I'm going to do it with and how I'm going to do it in a way that I think is harder to do when you're working for the man.
That is so very true. All right, last one. What do you think sets apart successful entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
I think it's honestly a combination of the last 2 pillars of Lean Out Method, that commitment and Kaizen, right? How committed are you? Are you willing to keep going? Are you willing to work through the challenges that come up, whether they're internal mindset challenges or whether they're real world challenges that you're facing? And are you continuously doing that reflection to see what's working, what you like, what you don't, and pivoting so that you are continuing forward with something that you really love and that you feel inspired to, instead of reluctantly moving forward with something because you said you were going to, which never ends well.
Okay, excellent.
Absolutely. You've got a special offer for our listeners. And so I just wanted to give you a moment to share that special offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I shared a little bit about operations. I do have a program called Simplify to Scale Ops Academy. And for anyone who is interested in putting those systems in place, learning more about lean strategic planning, building up their team, what I call your lean dream team, that's what we do together inside that program. And it does include private, personalized coaching and support. And if you head over to the special link that you'll find in the show notes, you will find $500 off that as a thank you for listening to this episode and for having me on the show.
If people are interested in getting in touch with you, what would be the best way?
Sure. You can head to leanoutmethod.com for all the things, or head to leanoutpodcast.com for more conversations like this one.
Awesome. Well, Krista, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Firing the Man podcast and looking forward to staying in touch.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for watching this video. If you got some value out of this, would you please hit the like and subscribe button? This is a free way to support the show, and it really helps us build our audience.